From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions. This is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. Lori Tucker here, along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs. We have a new look today. Got some headphones on. We have a whole new system here. Hope you can hear us fine and see us as well. We've got everything working here. Today, we are talking about death row executions. This is something we have not talked about in a while, Greg. And tomorrow, the state of Tennessee is going to execute an inmate for the first time in several years. There is a new protocol that is the subject of a lawsuit already. We have seen executions, though, halted or delayed in the past. In fact, with this very death row inmate who is awaiting execution tomorrow, back in 2022, this guy was ready to be executed. We're talking about Oscar Smith. He even had his last meal, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're calling a halt to the execution because of the way that this death row protocol, this cocktail for lethal injection was being handled. So here's the question to start things off, Greg. Is there any way at all, even though the governor has said this is going to move ahead, I'm not going to step in for a last-minute stay, is there anything this guy's attorneys can do to save his life at this late date?
Well, Oscar Smith is the oldest individual on Tennessee's death row.
Yeah, he's 75, right?
75 years of age. And he's kind of the poster child for how governors, the Supreme Court, can get involved at the 11th hour. And when I say poster child, he clearly was the benefit of an 11th hour reprieve by the governor in 2022. As you said, he'd had his last meal. Smith had been convicted previously of killing his estranged wife and 2 children. But there was a problem with Tennessee's cocktail. And there's kind of a backstory. We had a 3-drug cocktail where you had a paralytic, you had a sedative, and then you had actually a medication that would stop the heart. Countries around the world, when they realized what the United States was using those drugs for, slow-rolled or stopped the shipments to states that were using this as their lethal injection cocktail. So that's why the governor paused Tennessee's executions in 2022. And fast forward, now they have resumed, and we have a different manner of execution in Tennessee.
This one's called pentobarbital. It's just one drug.
It's one drug. It's used by 15 other states. It's on the agenda in 5 others. It's also what the federal government uses when they involve the death penalty. So we are getting ready to now move forward. And it's kind of a mandate throughout the country. There are 27 states that have the death penalty. The death penalty was unconstitutional, Lori, until 1976. Okay. From 2020 or 2000 to the present, Tennessee has executed 13 people. So we're not a big death penalty capital punishment state. The leading state is Texas.
They known for that.
596 executions. And this may have changed for the time that we're on the air.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, and I'm not being facetious, but
I worked there for years, and they got so prevalent we didn't report on them every time.
But back to your thing. So what do you do if you're the lawyers here at the 11th hour down there on death row?
And you have this lawsuit with this current protocol involving this one drug, again, pentobarbital, and Oscar Smith is one of the plaintiffs in that case.
He is, just like he was in the case before that why Governor Lee granted the reprieve. But what you do now is you dust off the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And what you see is capital punishment opponents really gear up and they offer assistance. And what you do is challenge the methodology of capital punishment and execution. So when you saw that successfully happen in the three-drug cocktail, Tennessee takes a step back, changes its execution protocol. Then you file a lawsuit alleging that there are flaws, there are problems. But let me tell you how haphazard in 2022 executions in this country became. And it raised the specter of cruel and unusual punishment. In 2022, 1/3 of all executions were botched. 1/3. Prior to that, from like the 1890s, only 3% of executions were botched, where they had to keep trying or somebody was in tremendous pain. The science says that it's supposed to only take 15 seconds when you have one of these lethal injection protocols.
Some have taken a lot longer than that.
A lot longer and have been incredibly painful as described by observers.
And let's talk about this latest lawsuit, and we're going to have a story in a moment that kind of lays it all out for you. But this lawsuit speaks to that, saying that pentobarbital provides a, quote, torturous death in many cases, that it can cause the lungs to fill with fluid and the person feels like they're suffocating or drowning. And that's kind of the basis of this lawsuit. So can the court step in at the last minute on this lawsuit to save this guy's life?
Every circuit, and Tennessee is in the Sixth Circuit. So when you're doing your emergency appeal, you do it you exhaust your state remedies. Then you would go to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Then you'd go to the Supreme Court. There is a Supreme Court justice that's assigned to each circuit to hear these 11th hour appeals. Justice Kagan is the one that hears these in the state of Tennessee. So I'm sure she is on death watch, knowing that on the 22nd, Tennessee has scheduled an execution, and there may be 11th hour pleas to halt that. But what's going to be interesting is the litigation surrounding pentobarbital from the 15 other states and in the federal system. Now, the federal system is just once again resumed capital punishment based on President Trump's executive order that, quote, has encouraged states and the federal government to use capital punishment. So, there's not a big body of science or law as it relates to vetting pentobarbital. But if you look at the cases, I don't care what the methodology is, it's never an easy thing to carry out, because I think the human factor always comes into being. South Carolina, recently an inmate opted for a firing squad, and the firing squad missed.
It didn't hit the right area of the body.
Missed his head and just wounded him miserably.
They said he was in incredible pain for more than 2 minutes.
More than 2 minutes. So it's an unfortunate legal and medical debate to have. But Oscar Smith is going to be, he was the poster child for stopping executions here in the state of Tennessee, and now they are going to resume if this execution does in fact take place on May 22nd.
Let's take a look now. I mentioned that we have a story laying out this latest lawsuit involving pentobarbital, the newest protocol being used here in Tennessee and 15 other states for death row lethal injections. Let's take a look.
Behind closed doors and concealed, Tennessee death row inmates say the state's new execution protocol isn't just secretive, it's concerning.
Tennessee is acquiring this drug from someone who is not authorized to sell it to them.
Amy Harwell is the assistant chief of the Capital Habeas Unit for the Federal Public Defender's Office, representing inmates on death row. She argues the state is admitted to buying a manufactured version of the lethal injection drug pentobarbital that wasn't made for executions.
The manufacturers of that chemical have put in place protections to make sure that their drug is never used in executions. So the fact that Tennessee has acquired this drug means that they acquired it from some diverted source.
The state wants to keep that source a secret. In a new court filing, death row inmates are asking a judge to peel back the curtain, accusing the state of buying the drug from the gray market.
There has already been fraud and misrepresentation in the acquiring of the drug. And that is of grave concern to our clients, because once we're buying drugs from people who are not authorized to sell it, well, that introduces the possibility of so many ways things can go wrong,
including potentially causing unnecessary pain and suffering, violating the Constitution, which even those on death row are entitled to. With a little more than a week until the first scheduled execution, inmates may be running out of time. Reporting in Nashville, I'm Tori Gessner.
Have it, Greg, and let's talk about the gray market. You know, buying these drugs, procuring these drugs from places where you don't know exactly what may be in them. Could that be enough to call a halt to this?
Well, to me, it's legally fascinating that
It is.
that the government, the state of Tennessee, and there was a specter of this in the original lawsuit, is allegedly obtaining drugs illegally to use in these execution cocktails.
And would that be allegedly because these are hard to get from other
Because
countries
other
for the reasons
countries,
you listed
we,
earlier?
we are one of the most prolific countries when it comes to capital punishment, and a lot of European countries, Scandinavian countries, aren't all in on that type of punishment. So, they are not. They kind of pump the brakes when they realize the drugs are going to Tennessee to be used in an execution. But what's fascinating to me, as you have this literal litigation or battle that is life or death, that there are allegations that the government has gotten it from the gray or black market,
Right.
and that they are refusing to divulge their source. Now, let's go back to Basics Government Law 101. When the government does something, takes an action, procures something, it should be subject to the Tennessee Public Records Act. So it's really remarkable that in this case, there is some hesitancy as to disclosing the origin and source of the pentobarbital.
I am surprised that other attorneys aren't all over this. And maybe they are, we just haven't heard about it yet. But as far as Smith's attorney saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't know where you got this, we don't know what's in it.
Well, you have to have standing, and there are 45 individuals on death row, and I'm sure all 45 individuals' lawyers are looking at this very, very carefully. But, to me, if everything has been complied with, all the laws, all the requirements, it should be a pretty simple task. But what is astounding is Tennessee's, in 1796, when we first had the death penalty, it was by hanging. Then we had firing squads. Then we had the prolific electric chair that we fondly named Old Sparky, that I think
Fondly?
Fondly, you may or may not be able to see if you take a tour of Brushy Mountain. And then it's kind of ebbed and flowed with electrocution and then lethal injection.
And if you were convicted before a certain year, you were able to elect your manner of death, correct?
Correct, prior to 1999. But this is really fascinating to me that we can't do it the right way. And we keep stumbling over ourselves time and time again here in the state of Tennessee to try to, and here's the legal touchstone, humanely and constitutionally kill someone.
Again, because even death row inmates, as we heard in that story, and as you likely know, they have constitutional rights as well. All right, let's talk about this. We're going to hear from one of the lead investigators on the case. Let's go back to why Smith is in this position on death row. As we mentioned, he was convicted of killing his ex-wife and her two teenage children in their Nashville home years ago, 1989. We tracked down, with the help of our sister station, the lead investigator on that case. Let's hear from him about his thoughts looking back on that.
That's one guy that when you're talking to him, his blood pressure wasn't getting elevated. He was just as calm, and you looked into his eyes and there was just nothing there, One of the few that I've seen like that.
All right, there is the mugshot from the Tennessee Department of Correction of Oscar Smith, now 75 years old. He's already ordered his last meal. This will actually be his second last meal, if you will, because he ordered one in 2022. And now he's going through the process again. What do you make of that? When you hear that lead investigator essentially saying without saying, this is one evil man.
You look at this, a step at a time. Mm-hmm. And, this individual committed a heinous crime
Wiped out a family.
Wiped out the family, his estranged wife, her children, in a very violent criminal episode. The jury, after hearing the aggravating factors and mitigating factors, was of the opinion that the sentence should be death. And this case has undergone a litany of appeals. So that's where that is. But now the corollary or the parallel train is, how do we humanely and constitutionally carry out or impose capital punishment on Oscar Smith?
Let me put you on the spot. If you were his attorney and knowing everything you know about pentobarbital and about some of the other questions and the fact that he is one of the plaintiffs in this case, what would you do in this 11th hour?
In the 11th hour, I would be doing a number of things. I would be preparing to reach out to Supreme Court Justice Kagan, who is on death watch for a potential petition to stay the execution. I would have my team of investigators try to figure out where in the heck Tennessee bought this pentobarbital in the gray market, because there's got to be someone somewhere that knows where it came from and how it got there. So, you know, if it's in the death row and you've had it delivered to someone that's getting ready to use it, it should not be rocket science to trace back where it came from. And then I would frame that issue, and I would pound the table on it, and go from there. But you know, there needs to be some integrity, some constitutional integrity in how we carry out executions, and it should be simple. If this method is flawed or we can't get the drugs legally, then I think the Tennessee legislature said electrocution's the fallback. Let's come up with a way that can carry out what the law required in a constitutional way that is not cruel and unusual. So to me, it's not rocket science. Either do it the right way or do it a different way. And this really doesn't involve whether there should be a sentence of capital punishment, a death penalty, or whatever. That's
not on the table.
That's not on the table. The table is, can you legally or illegally execute somebody?
Upholding their constitutional rights.
Their rights to, you know, one of our fundamental rights. And this protection, the Eighth Amendment, only comes up in limited scenarios when you have a democracy like this, thankfully. But is this unconstitutional because it's cruel and unusual punishment? So,
all right. Stay with that thought. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. I'm Lori Tucker, along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs, for Ask Isaacs, our live stream here. So many people are watching this, and we appreciate your support. And this one is a case that a lot of folks have been talking about, and that is the fact that there are 9 plaintiffs in a lawsuit about the new protocols for lethal injection here in Tennessee and 15 other states. And Oscar Smith, who's set to be executed tomorrow, is one of those plaintiffs. To bring you up to date, this is about cruel and unusual punishment involving this particular drug. That is at least what these plaintiffs are saying. And they question where Tennessee and other states get it and its impact, and whether it violates the Constitution because of its impact on the human body when it's administered.
Well, rewind. Oscar Smith, plaintiff, poster child, when his execution was stayed minutes before it was scheduled in 2022. Governor Lee says, let's hit the pause button. We need to figure out what is going on with our manner and methodology of execution. There are problems with the 3-drug cocktail. And there was a problem obtaining the drugs from European countries because they did not want them used for capital punishment. Well, one would think 3 years later, when you say all systems go, you would have fixed the problem on how to get the correct drug legally.
But now there's another problem with this lone drug being used, pentobarbital. Are you surprised, Greg, that the governor yesterday said pretty adamantly, I am not stepping in. There will be no stay of execution. This will go forward.
I'm just surprised that they didn't just say, here's where we got it, so what?
Interesting.
But the cloak and dagger, and governments shouldn't be in the business of confidentiality. They're supposed to be in the business of transparency, and that's why we have the Tennessee Public Records Act. And I don't know of any provision under Tennessee law that would keep the procurement of the pentobarbital somehow privileged, cloaked, or secret. So if you got it the wrong way and that's impactful, hit the pause button again. Come
That's
up with
huge.
A different,
If Tennessee is buying drugs on the black market or gray market, that's a huge problem.
yes.
Understatement.
And those are allegations that were made in this lawsuit from the federal public defenders. We have no personal knowledge of that.
Correct.
But if it is, then it's a problem, and it should be easily fixed, or it should be acknowledged. But what you're going to have is, once again, facts are stubborn things. It's either legal and was procured in a legal fashion, or it wasn't. I don't understand why there is a lack of transparency on this issue. But what you realize is, you got two sides, and you got the lawyers for Smith doing everything legally they can to try to save their client's life. On the other hand, you've got a government that wants to carry out a legal form of punishment, capital punishment, and it's ironic to me that it's hard in the 21st century to humanely execute somebody. I mean, think about that. It's whether we use
Isn't that
firearms.
an oxymoron? Humanely execute.
It's
The bottom line is causing somebody's death.
It may be an oxymoron, or it may be simply it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And so it's you beat your head against the wall sometimes, and all you have to do is kill someone humanely without buying drugs off the streets. And if you didn't do it, be transparent. But then again, but that's not the game. This isn't a lawsuit over whether the drugs pentobarbital was obtained legally or not.
Right.
The game is lawyers trying to save Oscar Smith's life. So that's the infighting. That's the game within a game, so to speak. But every time you see when you try to take someone's life, it needs to be done in a way that is vetted. Because you know what? Victims have rights. The victims of Oscar Smith's crime
Really?
need
They
closure.
had rights when he was
No, the victims
executing
of
them?
that family. That if that's your mother, that's your sister, that's your
I know.
brother.
I'm speaking for the viewer, who may be for the death penalty, saying, "Hey, these people had no rights."
No, what I'm saying is those
But I know what
victims
you're saying.
have a right to have the capital punishment carried out, because closure is something based on working within the criminal justice system that victims value, and what they don't like is
The whole
appeal
process.
after appeal after appeal, or error after error after error.
And this has gone on since 1989. We only have a couple of minutes left, everyone. And so why don't we bring you up to speed? We're on death watch now with Oscar Smith. Again, he's one of the 9 plaintiffs in this lawsuit against pentobarbital, the use of it in lethal injection, because it can cause, quote, a torturous manner of death, leaving the person who had been administered it, the feeling that they're drowning, that they're suffocating. It's not a quick death. So, or in many cases, we understand. So that's kind of the basis of this lawsuit. Can the court step in last minute? As we asked you earlier, we'll kind of end with that.
Absolutely, the courts can, and I think that's a decision that invariably Justice Kagan from the Supreme Court's going to be asked to make at the 11th hour, and it'll be interesting to see how the Supreme Court views Tennessee's refusal to be transparent as it relates to the origin of the pentobarbital.
That's emerging as sort of the bigger issue in this case.
Well, that's why if you don't do things the right way, somehow the real important issues get lost in the lawyers and the noise. And this shouldn't be about pentobarbital. It should be about Oscar Smith being sentenced for violently killing his estranged wife and 2 kids.
Yeah. Let's leave it there. Be sure to join us at 5:30. Let's go talk more about this tonight.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.